I'm tired of having to work harder to bypass mediocre men.
They went with a guy who had less experience than me.
Women make up 50% of the population. Why is it that we're only about 5% of the below the line workers?
They said our names wouldn't make the slate, so we're calling our own shots. Slated Women Filmmakers. Real opportunities, real sisterhood.
Welcome to Slated Women Filmmakers. I'm your host, Allie Mae, and we're here to talk the real pathways women use to break in, stay in, and get paid, turning individual experience into collective opportunity and lifting others as we rise. Today, I'm honored to welcome Toyi Elizabeth, a powerhouse storyteller and leader whose career spans both the creative and corporate worlds. Toyi is the president of the Cameron Adams Company, a multimedia content studio dedicated to producing positive, uplifting narratives across film, television, publishing, and podcasting. She's an award-winning author, screenwriter, producer, podcast host, and most recently signed a development deal with the Hallmark Channel. Before stepping fully into storytelling, Toyi built an extraordinary career as a global sales and strategic marketing executive in the pharmaceutical industry, leading multi-billion-dollar brands across 5 continents, experience that deeply informs how she now builds positions and sustains her creative work. Beyond her professional achievements, Toyi is deeply committed to service and community. She's a life member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and Jack and Jill of America Incorporated, an active member of the First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens, a member of the Writers Guild of America, an emeritus board member of Dress for Success, and currently serves on the board of trustees for Safe and Sound Somerset, supporting survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse. At the heart of everything she does, Toyi is a devoted wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend, and a woman passionate about helping other women live authentic, healed, and victorious lives through both stories that she tells and the life that she leads. Please welcome to Slated, Toyi Elizabeth.
Yay, thank you for having me.
Did I get everything right there?
You did.
Did I miss anything?
No, I think it was perfect.
Oh, awesome. Let's jump right in, Toyi. I am so happy to have you here. Toyi is a good friend of mine, and I think one of the most inspiring writer creators that I know in my life. Such a good friend and such a passionate woman. Honestly, one of the most devoted and focused writers and career people that I have met, which is what inspires me so much. So, Toyi, you were one of the members of our filmmaking group, and we always started with our 3 biggest wins. Can you share with my audience what have been your 3 biggest wins so far in your filmmaking career?
Oh gosh, my 3 biggest wins. So I would say the first win I had was in 2018, I got an 8 on the blacklist. And that was a huge win because I was ready to quit. And I remember praying and I was like, okay, God, they say the 8 is the thing that says you can write. I'm going to write it. If I don't get an 8, I'm done. I need some oxygen for this climb. So I ended up getting an 8 for a drama I wrote, Redeemer's Light. So that kept me a little while longer, right? That was probably my first win. Then I kept placing in different competitions. I would say my second win was the Atlanta Film Festival, because that's a tough one. So I placed in Atlanta with a different script, and that was the second one. And then the third one was the big one, and that was my break with the Hallmark Channel, also through the blacklist. So I'm going to say those are my big 3.
I love that your big 3 were steps along the way. A lot of the people that we talk to, and even ourselves, think of the big wins as the big wins, but something that keeps you going when you're at that point where you feel like quitting is a big win. I think sometimes just keeping going is a big win. Have there been many times for you as well?
Yes. I don't think anyone who wants to do this for a living doesn't have moments where they want to give up. They really need those moments. And that's why I shared the moments I did, because I think it's common that you want to give up. And there are days where I do. You may remember in our group, I used to say, if you want to quit, quit. Just don't quit forever. I've had days where I quit. I've had days where I'm like, I'm going to go sit downstairs and act like I'm not a screenwriter. I'm going to act like I don't even do this. And it helps rebuild my energy, but it also helps me to understand how much I love this, because the thought of actually quitting for real leaves an ache in my heart. And then I'm like, oh no, I really want to do this. So you get back up and you do it again. But yeah, I often want to quit.
I love so much hearing you say that, because I think that that's the thing that resonates most with so many of us. And it's not something that people are willing to say.
It's a hard business. And what I would say to people who haven't broken in yet is breaking in doesn't make it easier. In fact, it's actually harder. I've actually wanted to quit since I broke in because it's hard. And I've had to remind myself, you asked for this, you've
Yeah.
asked for it. So put your big girl pants on and get it done.
Yeah, I think there's a quote with Robert Downey Jr. that says, just be careful because you are going to get what you're praying for. You are going to get what you're visualizing, and make sure that you really want it.
Yeah.
We can say that you've broken in. You are getting paid to be a writer. That's how you're making
Right.
a living now. What are the hard times like when you're at that place now?
Yeah, I think there's two hard perspectives. I am a member of the Writers Guild of America, which is a great honor and privilege. And I've met so many amazing writers through this process. And part of the hard part of that is that this is also a business. So before you break in, all of your thoughts are around creating all of these great things. And in my mind, being a professional creator meant I was going to sit on the beach and write and drink from a coconut and all those things. And it's not that I have those moments, but this is also a business. As a part of the Writers Guild, we're getting ready next year to renegotiate because every 3 years, there's a renegotiation. That's business. And there's a lot of considerations that are in play. That's one part. The other thing I think is there are so many people involved in your work. So many people involved in your work. Before you break in to the industry, and we should probably say for people, break in means you've become a professional writer who is getting paid in the studio or independent system, right? You're working in the system. And doing that, you spent all of your time doing that, creating by yourself. I spent so much time in this office in front of these butterflies, creating story. Oh, that's great. When you become a professional screenwriter, there are so many people that touch your creation. This whole thing, like you birth a baby, and yeah, you do. And then once you birth it, it's all hands on deck. Everybody has a part of the story. You know this because you're a director. Costuming, budgeting. You can come up with the greatest story of all time. I might want an airplane in my story, but if an airplane is not in the budget, you're not getting the airplane. You got to figure out another way because this person cannot jump out of an airplane because we don't have the money for that. So
Right.
it's not just this kind of carte blanche creative process. It's collaboration. And that's the biggest part is sometimes you really want to show something or you really want to say something that you just can't.
Do you think, having learned this now, that all of those voices are going to be part of the input, but also a lot of that seems like it must be budget driven? Is there any advice you can give to writers who have not broken in yet with regard to writing towards those things?
Yes. I'll give you the advice that was given to me in my first development meeting, and it was don't worry about the budget. Your job is to create. Write the biggest, greatest, grandest thing you can think of. Write a $300 million epic movie and then let them cut it down. It's much easier to write the grand thing that you have in your mind, boats and planes and trains, and then let them say, we can't do that, than it is for you to come in bare bones and people not understand that you have the imagination and the ability to create at that level. That was the advice given to me, and I have taken it. I'm going to write a $50 million movie every time, and I'll let them cut it down. And if I ever get an opportunity to write genre, I'm writing 300 million and I'll let them cut it down.
That's awesome. When you're writing for primarily Hallmark, right, is what you're primarily writing for now?
I write for different companies, but I broke in with the Hallmark Channel.
Let's talk about that, breaking in with the Hallmark Channel. Can you tell us how that came about?
So I broke into the Hallmark Channel via the Blacklist. And for the people who don't know, the Blacklist is a place for emerging and hopeful screenwriters to share their work. And every now and then on the Blacklist, they have a contest or they have an opportunity. And one of the opportunities was for the Hallmark Channel that you could submit a project for considerations. This was called the Emerging Voices Partnership. And I think they have this partnership with other companies. I think they had one with Paramount, and HBO, and Amazon, and one of them was Hallmark. I had something that fit Hallmark. And it was a rom-com pilot that I had written, but I felt like it really matched the tone and the style And my background as a marketer kind of helped me say, okay, this is the brand. So I submitted that. This was November of 2022. There were all of these changes that were happening at the channel at the time that I didn't know about. And so things kind of dragged on. But what I saw online was people getting rejections because they did this thing where, okay, if you apply and if you don't advance, you get a free month on the blacklist, right? So I would see these people on social media say, oh, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful for this free thing. So I was like, oh, I must still be in the game. But I hadn't heard anything. And so it's a yes until I hear no. In 2023, I got the note that said that I had advanced. And you had to do a resume, a personal statement, and why you wanted to write at Hallmark. So I turned that in. That was probably March of 2023. Then the strike came, right? And for 5 months, there was nothing. And then after the strike, there was nothing because the industry is trying to get itself back on its feet. Okay, great. Then in February of 24, I was called in to interview. And I was told it was between me and one other person. And so I did the interview. The interview was set for 30 minutes. We went an hour and 10 minutes. So I felt pretty good when I left, but I wasn't sure. It must have been the end of January because I knew February was coming for Hallmark. So they're busy, right? They're not thinking about the emerging writer. They're busy. And so February came and went in March. I finally get an email and it says, we're going to get right to it. After 2 years, we're going to get right to it. And they told me that I had been selected as the winner for the Emerging Voices Partnership. As a part of that, I knew I was going to get a WGA deal. You sign that paperwork immediately. This is a WGA deal. This is what you agree to. Once I got the word, it was, okay, now we're in there. And then the work began.
So let me ask you a couple questions. Just to clarify, the blacklist, there's two different versions of the blacklist. There's a professional version and there's a public facing version. When the blacklist comes out, the films that have been selected, executives submit their favorite scripts, and that's what comes out on the blacklist. But you're talking about the public facing blacklist that everyone can go on to and get their scripts rated. That's the portion of the blacklist that you're referring to.
That's correct. The people at the blacklist, Franklin Leonard, who's amazing and has created this space for them. What he does once a year is goes out to the executives and of all the scripts that they've read and asks them for the best unproduced thing. So what's the best thing you've read? But all of those scripts are on the blacklist.
When you went into that interview with Hallmark, how did you prepare for it?
First of all, I prayed a lot. You know this because you're my friend, so I'm a big prayer. I prayed a lot. But by that point, I had written what I had written. I am who I am. And I had gotten my mind to the place where this is either an opportunity that's a fit for me or it's not. And I know that that's unique to a certain kind of person. I get it. But I'm actually that kind of person. So as I was going into this, I was going to give it my best shot. I knew what I had written. I knew who I was as a writer. I think that is critical. Anytime you get to an interview, you got to know your voice. You got to know who you are and you got to know why you write. And I was pretty secure in all of that. So I said lots of prayers that I'd be able to articulate it in the right way. And that's what happened.
Yeah. And who are you as a writer again? You want to tell us that?
I am blessed, Black, and Appalachian. I write happy endings where evil never wins and married people have great sex.
Every time I hear you say that, my eyes get watery and I get very emotional because I remember working on that with you. You have a beautiful voice and it's a beautiful writer's statement of ownership of what you write and who you are. It's so important to be able to articulate that for yourself. What did they cover in that big interview?
Oh gosh, I can't remember, but some of it was around why I wrote the thing I wrote. So I talked about that. And what I actually submitted was a pilot. It's called Staying Married. And it's basically about friends navigating their marriages. One is cheating on her husband, the other one's being cheated on, and the other one is just getting a divorce. So why I wrote it, why I wanted to write it, what kind of movies I like, what kind of movies I watch, what kind of stories I watch, and kind of my writer's journey. Obviously, there were questions about what I had seen on Hallmark, what I had watched, and what I liked about those things and what I didn't, what I would do differently. So all of that.
That's awesome. And you just nailed all that, I know, because you know who you are as a writer and you know what you have to offer and what your stories are. I think a lot of people just don't understand how important that is to know that stuff. So was that your first big payday?
I would say yes, because it was a guild contract. So the best thing about being in the guild is the minimum of what you're going to make, and you just negotiate up from there. That's why being a part of the union is so important. It's why it's important that we keep our unions and that people work together, because there's power in that collective voice. So yes, I would say with regards to screenwriting, that was my first payday.
That was your trajectory of how it went for you to get into the room. And that has made all the difference, right?
Yeah.
What has been the big creative scary risk that changed how you see yourself as an artist or a professional? Has there been one?
Big creative scary risk.
For some people, it's just saying they're going to do this. They're going to pursue this. That's a big scary risk for a lot of people. For some people, it's changing genre. Do you still take any creative risks?
I do, yeah. I do take creative risks a lot. I think the biggest thing, if I can understand what you're asking me, because I worked so hard on my voice and it took me 10 years to get to this point. My overnight success was a 10-year journey. I'm pretty clear on like kind of what I create. I don't know that it's a risk, but I guess it is. And it's like sticking to that, right?
So tell us about the 10-year journey.
It was about perfecting kind of my voice, working on my skill, but also embracing my identity so that I could really write with authenticity, right? So the example is I'm Black, obviously. I'm from Appalachia. So my Black experience is a small town country Appalachian experience. But after college, I moved up here, lived in the Northeast. I'm a whole New Yorker at this point. So allowing all of that to be a part of my writing instead of allowing myself to be put in a box. There's an argument that if you jump in the box that's offered you, you have a better opportunity, right? I didn't jump in boxes. I had opportunities in that 10-year period, particularly after I got that 8 on the blacklist, to write things that didn't resonate with my soul. And I said no to those things, wondering, is this the opportunity? And I'm missing it. And I think you just really have to be good with who you are, what you believe, so that you just know when something is not aligned with you or when something is not for you, and you have to stay true to that. If I had jumped into those opportunities, I wouldn't be where I am, which is in the guild, writing professionally, making money, but also good with myself in the mirror, right? That's most important to me. I have peace doing this. And I can look at myself in the mirror without feeling like I'm not me.
Do you think any of that comes just with maturity and age, or do you think that that comes as a result of your spiritual beliefs, first of all, but also your upbringing? Where did you get that?
Jesus. That's the short answer. You knew that was going to be my answer.
I did.
I am a big faith person. My faith is integral. What I believe about the world, that there is a God, that I am a disciple of Christ, like for real. I don't mean I just go to church Sunday. I mean, I've read the Bible and I read books about Jesus. I'm like, oh, this is how he did it. This is how I want to do it. That's where my love comes from for humanity. I tell people, it's even a part of my bio. I'm Christian, but then I clarified the kind that reads the Bible, minds my business, and loves everybody, not some of this that we see going on today. That's where I got that from. The revelation that you hear people say, I am enough. And they give that affirmation, I am enough. But a lot of times they don't believe it. I believe I'm enough because I truly believe I was created by God to do whatever it is he has me to do. If it didn't come to me, it's because it wasn't mine to have. And the things that are mine to have, nobody can take from me. Nobody.
I love that so much. I really do. If it was for me, it can't be taken from me. That's such a powerful affirmation and belief. I don't think that any of us can take our wins and claim them as solely our own. Have there been other women, particularly other women, who have helped you along the way, who have helped you get to where you are now?
Yeah, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother, every woman that ever, picked cotton and snuck to read. I am a writer in a country where it was illegal for my people to read. Yeah, all of those women, I stand on their shoulders and I'm humbled for every woman who has stood up for the rights of women. We get to live in a generation with freedom for women that even our mothers didn't have and our grandmothers didn't have. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful that you started the group, a place for us to be together. I showed up week after week for however many years that we did that. Here are my wins. Here are my struggles. Here's where I need help. Meeting each other, meeting new people. So yeah, women have been extremely helpful and encouraging to me. And I'm like super grateful, but also so have some men. Since I came into the guild, there have been men who have really championed me, my work, stood up for me, made sure I knew what was right, all of those things. So I'm grateful.
And with regard to the Hallmark stuff, are there other women who are involved in upper echelons of production who are championing you as well?
There are. My development executive, which we're still in development, so I can't talk a lot about what's happening, but my development executive is amazing and she's been in the industry a long time and she has pushed me. I remember the process was grueling. Coming up with a concept, coming up with a story was grueling. And I bet you we had 9 ideas that I had to perfect. And it's like long lines and then paragraphs and then over and over again. I was just like, oh my God, I suck at this. I'm so terrible. And the day I turned in the one that actually ended up getting approved by the development committee. And I remember she said to me, you did such a great job with this. I literally thought I was going to kill over. I was like, oh my God. But she pushed me and she got the best out of me. And that's her job. So I'm grateful to be working with a woman like that.
Awesome. And it's not as easy as we think it is. I've heard from other writers who are at your level who talk about how it is creating with committee, and that committee is sometimes picking every single sentence apart. And that's not easy. It's not easy to have your work picked apart at all.
It is challenging. I remember sitting in one meeting and I was sitting right here in this chair and I was like this. And I was listening and I was listening and I was listening. And on the inside, I was crying like a baby on the inside. And I thought, gosh, I'm so ungrateful right now, because this is what I wanted. And now I'm sitting here wishing that I wasn't sitting here. And I had to just get my mind, and I had to understand that this is a business and this is how you create. And I used some of my corporate mind, right? Because in corporate, every decision we made was like 1,000 people, right? That's what this is. And I think it's so important for people to know that if you are someone who is so bent on your creative voice and your creation and things being the way you want it to be, what's in your head needs to be what is on the screen, then you should seek independent filmmaking, raise the money, and do it on your own. If you want to be in the studio system and you want to work for channels and networks, then you have to be collaborative. And you have to pick and choose, okay, this thing right here, I'm willing to die on the hill for. This thing right here, I feel very compelled to hold on to. And then everything else, you got to be willing to let go. You also need to be able to defend your idea based on more than just, well, because I really like it. Because other people have great ideas. When you get over on this side, the notes is a whole, it's a whole situation, right? But you learn to take the note and not be defensive. And then what I have found is that even though there are so many voices, everyone is collaborating. Everyone has the same goal, to give the audience the best possible product, right? So it's not like people are trying to sabotage you or spoil your creativity. Right. It's the best possible product. So when you do get a note, you can think about it. It may be different than what you thought you were going to create initially, but if you really think about it, you can come up with a way to do it. And that just happened to me yesterday on a project that I have in development. And the note hit me that didn't make any sense based on the context of where the story was going. And so then I explained, well, remember, the story's going this way. And then it was like, oh, right. And then we had a conversation. And in that conversation, we ended up someplace in the middle where I started, what they suggested, and that's it. The note behind the note that we all say, we all talk about the note behind the note, right? It becomes more than a colloquialism. You really need to figure out what doesn't work and what the note giver is trying to get to so that you can get to the best possible solution. And that's hard if you're married to your own creative process.
You have to be able to defend the reason why something's important to the long game of the story, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the other thing is understanding process. One of the great things about being in the guild is you get to screen everything and go to all these talks, and it's just wonderful. I went to the screening of Wicked 2, Wicked for Good, and you're listening to the writers talk. And one of the things that they said is how many drafts of this they did. I think they said they talked for 300 hours over Zoom writing these two stories because they wrote the two movies together. And it was great to hear it because rewriting is part of the process. And I can say for myself that before I started the professional side, I thought I need to be 3 drafts. I need to be 5 drafts. And if I'm not 5 drafts, then it's not good, right? No, you draft and you draft and you draft and you do 50, 60, 70 times conversations and changes that you actually make until you get the right thing. Rewriting is the process. This notion of your first draft is crap always. That's the rule. I don't care how good you think it is. I don't care how much time you spent on it. Once you really start to collaborate with other people, you really see that how much better the story can be. And you'll put stuff in and you'll take it out and you'll put it back in and you might take it out again. That's the process of writing. And that's something I did not understand before I was a professional writer.
Before you were a professional screenwriter, because you were a novelist first,
I was.
correct?
Yeah.
So did you not have that process with writing novels?
No, I have 6 books, 4 novels, and 2 nonfiction books.
That's how you started writing, isn't it?
Technically, yes. That's how I started writing for money. I'm a storyteller. And so that's why I tell people I'm a storyteller, whether I'm journaling, whether I'm on social media. I want to tell stories that ultimately help people heal, where evil never wins and married people have great sex, right? So in that, there's so much room to tell stories. So as a fiction writer, as a novelist, there's not many people talking about your story like that. There's editing in how you tell the story, but the story is yours. All of those stories were mine because when you're writing novels or you're writing a book, it's so different. The book is very introspective. It's from a personal relationship. You can get into the thoughts of the character. You know, there's so much more. Then you have to be cinematic. I haven't written a book since I've been doing this because it's a completely different skill. I have to constantly think about what is the interpersonal interaction and extrapersonal interaction. What's the tree doing? What's the protagonist doing? What's the antagonist doing? You can put in the thoughts. You can't do that in a screenplay. So yeah, I started with that kind of storytelling. Now, I will say I love dialogue. I've always been heavy on dialogue. I will probably write a play eventually because my books are heavy dialogue. And that's how I started thinking about screenwriting, is because people were like, this should be a movie, because I love writing dialogue. I've gotten to work a lot with dialogue. I get hired to, hey, here's this script. Can you fix the dialogue on this? I love writing dialogue because I love listening to the way people talk.
That's awesome. So you get hired to be a dialogue polisher, basically, right? How do you get those jobs?
I think there are multiple ways. Once you navigate people, you're networking, people begin to know you, that you tell people I love writing dialogue, or people read something that you've written, right? Because everybody's always reading each other's stuff. You read something and you're like, oh, the dialogue is really good. I either have a friend who needs someone to polish, or I have something that I need polished. It works the same way everything else does. You know, you have to know what you know, but who you know helps you do what you know.
How do you broaden your circle in this industry so that you know more people? Is it through the WGA or?
Yeah. Well, for me right now at this space, it's all WGA. I'm building my partners and my people. There are some people that you really just click with. You're also going to events all the time. So in those events, you're meeting people who are doing the same kinds of things. You're meeting people who work on shows that you love. I spent all last year kind of meeting people that worked on stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, I love that show. I thought it was so good. A holiday party, a screening, a talk, a continuing education platform. Like, you meet people everywhere, and it's great because they're artists.
I love that you have a little bit of a different path than I think what most of us think about with screenwriters who break in.
is that they bought into you, not necessarily a specific spec script that you had written. You must have had some writing samples, but can you tell us a little bit more? Because it sounds like with Hallmark especially, so they picked up something you had applied for. It wasn't specifically a script that they loved, and then they said, we have to meet this writer. It was more that they loved you, the package, the log line that you are bringing to the table.
The first thing was the script, though. That was Staying Married.
That been produced?
No, no, it has not been produced. I'm trying to sell it, so call me. It's a pilot, but Hallmark Rights rated TVG. It's not TVG. So I did submit it because it was romance and because of the voice. But I knew that they weren't going to buy that project unless we changed it. So it did start with the script. I didn't have the opportunity to sell myself as a writer until they read the script. So the only thing that I submitted initially was that pilot. That was it. And then from the pilot, I was then requested for a personal statement, a resume, and the why I wanted to write for them.
But the competition was not for Hallmark to buy a script. It was to meet an emerging writer.
Yes, the competition was to meet an emerging writer whose voice could match with Hallmark. And it wasn't just, I want to keep saying this because the Emerging Voices Partnership, I think there were 6 different networks. I applied to Hallmark. One was Amazon MGM, and I know one was HBO, right? So there were 6 different ones. I applied to the Hallmark one because I felt like, yeah, I can do this. I can do romance. Hallmark has a very defined audience base, right? It's the middle of the country, and that's where I'm from. I know this. This is it. I am the small town girl that moved to New York. That's what they do. So, yeah.
How long had you worked on that script?
Oh, I probably worked on that script. I don't know how many times I revised it because it started as a feature. And then through the group, I changed it to a pilot. And so I changed it into a pilot. And so I worked so much on the pilot and I felt like the pilot was better developed. So I submitted that hour pilot to Hallmark. But I don't know how many times I wrote it, but I worked on it a lot.
A long time, right?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people who are especially starting out or who've written 1 or 2 scripts, they don't understand how much you revise and rewrite. And oftentimes it is page 1 in a complete rewrite. Can you estimate how many times do you revise a script?
Well, I can tell you that my first draft, and this was the same with my books, my first draft is probably a 3rd draft because the way my brain works, I can't move past something that's not right. And so the first part of my stuff is always like really tight because I start at the beginning every day until I get to the midpoint. And then once I get to the midpoint, I start at the midpoint every day. And I move through. So I do that every day. So I don't know, I mean, hundreds of passes, right? Hundreds of passes. If I'm working, I usually finish a script in 6 to 8 weeks. And I work 6 days a week. So 6 days a week, 4 to 7 or more hours a day, however many passes those are. That gives me my first version, right? That gives me my first draft. The versions are anywhere from probably, I don't know, 5 to 8. Depending on the feedback, depending on pacing and things that might work. The project that I was working on, I told you about yesterday, The Note, I just took information from the first act break and moved it to the midpoint. The first whole part of the second act now had to be rewritten because we revealed a lot at the break and we decided to hold something back to the midpoint. That's a whole different animal. And you just have to go head down, you go in and you do it.
That is discipline. That is what a lot of people underestimate, how much discipline it takes to do this, to sit down and force yourself to write every single day. I mean, in the group that we're in, we hear it every week, how people are struggling to write. And one of the things that I've always known about you is that you don't have that struggle because you don't allow that struggle.
I have it. I
You
don't allow it. There is a novelist, Walter Mosley. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's amazing. I've read everything he's written. He created the Easy Rollins detective stories. And so I had an opportunity to have breakfast with him some years ago before I was a screenwriter. And my first book was out and I was working on my second book. And I said to him, like, I don't know, how do you find the time to write? I was still working in corporate and I was whining. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, how do you write every day? He was like, I sit my behind in the chair and I write. And I was like, well, that's pretty simple. And I was like, do you write all day? He was like, no. I was like, you don't write all day? Because I love to write. I would write all day. He was like, do you love to have sex? Do you have sex all day? And I was like, no, good point. And so now, because I do this every day, I do give myself a cutoff. So, like I said, 6 to 8, sometimes I'll break. I might come back in the evening and do some other things if there's still something that I haven't gotten quite right. But some days I might only write 4 hours for the day, and then I go off and do other stuff.
Yeah. But it is your job.
It is
So
my job.
you do it like a job. Yeah, that's amazing. It's really inspiring. I hope that people listening to the podcast get that that's a big part of your win. That is a big part of why you have gotten where you are. You are consistent in your effort, in your output, and that matters because every time you finish a script, every version of the script, you are a better writer every single time. And it does take a lot of practice. I want other women writers to understand that it isn't something that you just pick up and you do and you're a success at it.
Yeah, no, it takes discipline to your point. I think the other thing you said, which is critical, is that like everything you write is worth it because it makes you a better writer. So early on, I was a semifinalist in the 168 Film Festival, right? And it's where like you have a week to write, you get a development executive, they give you the topic, and then you write for the week, right? So you're under a lot of pressure. And it really did help develop me and model this writing on a deadline thing, which is very, very real. But when I go back to read that script compared to now, I'm like, oh my gosh. Because there are just things that I've learned. You study, you take classes, you read books, and you write. Like that's what you do. And you push yourself. Now, I would like to think that I'm going to continue to push myself for as long that I'm able to do this because I just want to keep getting better at it.
Yeah. And I would say it's not just writing, it's all filmmaking. Every short film you make, every short film you work on, every single one makes you better. Every single time you step on set, every single time you get behind your screen and you write a page of your dialogue, every single time builds up your resources of knowledge and you definitely get better. Nothing you do in this business is going to be a waste of time.
And I would say also reading other people's scripts, read produced scripts, your favorite movie, read those scripts, exchange with your colleagues and get to know other people's styles and writing. And that helps you with yours as well.
Absolutely. I'm always reading scripts. I'm always reading. And I will read any script. I'm always reading and I'm always watching movies because I write movies. So I'm always watching features. I'm always breaking them down. If I have the script for the movie, I sit, I pause, I look at the beats, I break it down, I watch it over and over again. I see the way that they're hitting the structure because structure is important. That's a big part of what I do.
That's amazing. That's really great advice too. What would be one thing that you might have done early in your career that you would never do now?
Oh gosh, work for free. That's the first one.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. So I think in the beginning of your career, you just want to work. But what I've found is that it's human nature, no matter what you're doing, is people value what they pay for. And I have talked to a lot of people. We've had a lot of conversations about people who worked for free in the beginning. And then when there was a paid opportunity, I mean, even for their friends, there was a paid opportunity. The friend then gave it to someone else because they were like, oh, you're like a free person. You don't work for this. And it's true. You have to know your value. Don't overestimate your value because some people do that, right? Don't overestimate your value, but definitely know your value. I don't care if you pay me a quarter, but you can't get me for free. I wouldn't do that now. Yeah.
That's really, really solid advice. I've worked for free a lot. And again, it's like the experience thing. I have no regrets about that. But honestly, the last time really taught me I won't be doing that again because they did not appreciate me.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, if you're just doing something for the first time, then you're not working for free if you're working to build a reel or you're working to get experience. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking that after you have an established voice and after you have done a number of those things, they need to be paying you something. Because I came into this, first of all, not as a kid, right? That a big part of this whole, oh, you know who you are, and that's great. And I will take the pat on the back, but it's also because I'm not a kid. I've been in rooms with some of the 20-year-olds that are entering, and I'm like, oh, wow. Because they don't know their voice as human beings, let alone your creative voice. So I can imagine how hard that would be. That wasn't my experience. By the time I came into this, I knew who I was as a person, knew who I wanted to be as an artist, and was able to hold true to that.
Who has been instrumental in helping you level up? And what specifically have they done that maybe made a difference? Has there been another project that someone's pushed you for?
People will ask me if I'm interested in something. People will send me things. You probably don't remember this, but you were the person that sent me the Hallmark thing. Yes. And I know you don't remember this because every time we talk about it, you never say it. You were the person who sent me the opportunity from the blacklist with Hallmark. And I was like, yeah, maybe. You had just read Staying Married and they were looking for rom-coms.
But I sent you that.
Yes. Yeah. So it's that. But if you're asking if there's someone like in corporate America who has championed me or mentored me, I don't have that yet.
You're still hustling. You're trying to get jobs still.
But
you are
everybody
working.
is. I think that's such a misconception about getting into the industry. And that's why I say breaking in just means you're making a little more money for what you're doing, but it's still the same. I have friends who have had network TV shows, more than one, who have been showrunners on network TV shows. And they spend their days just like I do, hustling. That's what this industry is. I mean, I don't know because I'm not Aaron Sorkin. I'm pretty sure he's not hustling right now. I'm pretty sure people want him. They ask him and he turns it down if he doesn't want it. But for the rest of us who aren't Aaron Sorkin, who aren't Ava DuVernay, we're out here hustling. And they probably are still hustling too a little bit because that's just what this industry is.
So what does the hustle look like for you?
It looks like continuing to write. It looks like continuing to network and meet people in the industry and try to find stories that resonate with me. It also looks like expanding my footprint in the industry. So in 2026, I am planning to dip my toe a little into directing, to see if that's something that I would like to do. For years, I've said no, no, no. But people are like, you're so bossy and you know exactly what you want. The way that I write and the way that I see my script, they're like, you should think about directing. There are some things coming that in 2026, I'm committing to trying it and see if I like it.
If a woman filmmaker, writer is almost there, taking meetings, getting close but not breaking through, what would you say she should look at? Maybe refining.
If she's taking meetings, if she's consistently getting meetings because her writing is good and that's why she's getting the meetings, but she isn't landing it, I would probably say spend more time on her voice, on knowing who she is and being able to articulate that. One of the things that I find so interesting in the industry is that as a writer, you also need to be able to pitch and be good in a room. And that's crazy because generally we just want to hole up in our offices. I was a marketer and exec. I'm used to presenting. I'm used to being in front of people. I'm used to talking. That's pretty unique for someone who just wants to hole up and write. But the expectation is you need to write and then you need to be able to communicate. And so it may be that she's not landing the job or the role because she's unable to clearly communicate who she is as a writer or her vision.
Right. I was just going to ask, do you see any mistakes that women are making that maybe unintentionally keeps them from getting hired?
I just think it's like super competitive. And then sometimes you don't get the job because it's just not right for you. So that's why I say you really have to know yourself so that if I go into a pitch and I don't get the job, I don't think like, oh, I suck or, oh, I wasn't good. If I know that I gave it my best shot and I know that I clearly communicated who I am and what I bring to the table and I didn't get it, I generally feel like it wasn't a match for me. My younger son was a model in New York. One of the things they told him immediately as a kid was, if you don't get the role, it's about the clothes. It's not about you. It's that they need a certain thing. And so because of that, I look at my career as a screenwriter the exact same way. There are things that I'm a match for. And I think that's important if you know who you are and you can stand true to that, you can wait for the market to meet you. If you're just going to bounce around and, oh, I write drama, I write comedy, I write thriller, I write suspense, I write this, I'll write for this, I'll write for that, then you really don't know who you are. And so in every opportunity, you're not going to be the best person. I am going to tell you, there is not a Black Appalachian, happy ending, great sex writer out here who can beat me at being me. So when that opportunity meets me, I'll win. How do you make a commercial movie and put some Jesus in it? I'm your girl. There's nobody better than me at that. And I know this. I'm the most regular, super Jesus-y person that anybody knows. I'm your girl for that. And you have to know that. You have to know when I'm your girl.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that advice. That is so brilliant. And you're right. You do have to know that, but you also have to put yourself out there.
We were talking about something earlier and you said it. I know this. This is what I know. I know how to do this thing. That's it. You have to just know what you know. Dialogue is my thing. Like I know it. Like I know how people talk. I've been listening to people talk. I've lived up here. I've lived in Boston and New York. I spent a ton of time, my early childhood in LA, in Appalachia. I know this country. I've lived every part of this country from Pacific to Atlantic, and I can write set anywhere. I've traveled globally. These are all things I bring with me to the experience, and I'm holding on to that. I'm holding on to that. I tell people all the time, if you want a gritty urban drama, I'm not your girl. I get I'm Black. I can't write that. And I'll just say that. Like, I know when someone's coming to me just because I'm Black, because I'm like, why do you think I can write that? You've seen nothing about me that says I can write that.
Are there any opportunities that you know of that anyone in our audience should be looking out for right now?
The only thing I can say is that I think that if you're trying to break in, you need to get your stuff out there. I was always submitting to film festivals and contests and whatever it is, because in each case, people are able to read your writing and you're going to meet people. And so I did that a lot. And I think a lot of people are afraid to share their stuff. Like, oh, I don't want somebody to steal my idea. Let me tell you, there are only 6 stories. We all know this, right? There are only 6 stories. How you execute the story is going to be different. But that space of people being afraid, because I know a lot of people that don't share their writing because they're afraid. Maybe that's where my faith comes in, where I'm like, you can't take it from me if it's mine. But also, if you don't share it, then no one will know. So register it at the Writers Guild, copyright it, do what you have to do so you can defend it, but you do have to share it so people can read it and know who you are. Apply to the contests, apply to the festivals, just continue to work, but be focused on your story. Don't be focused on the industry. Don't be focused on breaking in. And I think you said that earlier about me, and that is true. I was just really focused on telling these stories. And then the rest happens as we move forward.
Yeah. Okay, as we wrap up, let's just ask you, what are your 3 big goals for the coming year?
Oh gosh. I have things I want to sell. So I have specs that I want to sell that I have written. I am going to, as I mentioned, stick my toe into directing to see if that's something that I would like to do. That's 2 goals. My third one, I also am interested in, because I'm a storyteller, I'm interested in these audio podcasts, like this new fictional, it's 1948 and we're all by the radio listening. And so I may do some work with that as well.
One of the women in our group, Melody, has just completed her first season of one of those.
I saw that.
The Farm. It's a really great podcast. So is there anything that we, Pamela and I, or anyone in our audience can do for you?
Follow me on Instagram at Toyi Elizabeth, communicate, share ideas. It's really important that creators be together in their tribe. I feel very different with my creative tribe than I do with real people in the real world, right? And so I think the more we can all interact together, encourage each other, the better we all are.
Toyi, thank you so much for joining us. This has been such a great chat, and I appreciate your time. Is there anything you'd like to plug while you're here?
My book, Toyi Elizabeth, my last book was a fictionalized memoir about my life. And I made it fictionalized because I love my family, but also because the important thing for me is that people knew the story. And so everything that we talked about today, if you read the book, it'll give you an idea of who I am, what I've come through, and why I believe the things that I believe. So it's called Toyi Elizabeth, but remember, I write my books under the pseudonym Cameron Adams, and you can find it everywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart.
Thank you so much for joining us, Toyi, and thank you for joining us on Slated Women Filmmakers. If today's conversation inspired you, resonated with you, or gave you a new tool for your journey, share this episode with fellow filmmakers. That's how we grow this sisterhood. Follow Toyi and support her goals, share her wins, and keep this cycle going, because the more we champion each other, the more doors open for all of us. And please stay connected with us here on Slated.